Good morning, everybody. Very good to see you here at McLaughlin Painting and Decorating. And what better day to be talking about apprenticeships, about training, than on GCSE Results Day. And I'm sure hundreds and hundreds of thousands of youngsters hopefully are delighted with their results. But it actually goes to the heart of the future that young people take at that crucial age of 16 to 18. And I remember my first job was in the world of construction. Yes, I was digging trenches with a groundworks contractor in about 1983, I think it was. And it was to the heart of me. My background is construction, so talking about apprenticeships, talking about trades in a business that has done so well, that has grown so successfully, goes absolutely to sort of the heart of who I am, who we are as a political party. And there is nothing more important than ensuring that young people have the full range of options, and apprenticeships are critical, absolutely critical to that. Back in the 80s, we used to call it sort of YTS, youth training schemes, and it was the heart of businesses, of communities and families. And I just feel, in a sense, that we've slightly lost our way, and that's why what we're announcing today is so critically important. And you'll hear a lot from politicians about young people, about apprenticeships, but the evidence is truly, truly shocking about what's happened in the last 10 to 15 years. And the really key statistic that shocks me is that the number of apprenticeships aged between 16 and 18 has fallen by about a half, from about 40% to around 20% in the last 7 to 8 years. That is actually nothing short of a scandal, because it's literally where apprenticeships should start. In particular, in trades and skills, what they call intermediate apprenticeships, again, that percentage has collapsed. That's exactly the wrong place and space of where it should be. So what we're announcing today is the reverse of that. It is a clear sign to everybody that not only must we make work pay, earlier this week we talked about making welfare work, but actually work is a great thing. Skills are a great thing, trades are a great thing. It was wonderful meeting some of the apprenticeships that have been working in Kevin McLaughlin's firm here this morning. And so I think everybody should be under no doubt whatsoever. We are 120% focused on making sure we've got the right apprenticeship schemes, the right opportunities for young people. Because so often, actually, many youngsters, they get their GCSE results and they say, do you know what, actually, maths in a classroom's not for me. What are the other options out there? And the options of going to work in a trade as an apprenticeship is a fantastic one. And of course, in the world of AI, actually, it's a long time before AI and robots go onto construction sites, painting, decorating, plumbing, bricklaying, and the like. That's why this really is the very heart. So, no further ado, delighted to welcome the boss, the founder of McLaughlin Painting and Decorating, Kevin McLaughlin. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm just going to talk about my life story. I left school at 15. I was the last year that could leave at 15, 4 years. How it was, I didn't want to stay at school. I didn't like school. I know now I could have done well at school, but it wasn't for me. I've only had 2 jobs in my life. I then went into an apprenticeship. It took me 4 years, 2 years craft, 2 years advanced craft. I then worked for a while, and in 1987 I started my business. We've gone from nothing to a company that works around the country, delivering hotels, stadiums, even interior design work, a complete mix of everything. And no matter where you go in life now, you look at anything, it's painted. So there's always going to be work. I started my own business in 1987. The workforce 2, then 4, then 6. And after about 3 or 4 years, I realised there's an age gap developing here. The youngest person is 27, 28. So I started my apprenticeship scheme based upon apprentices my apprenticeship. Since then, we've had apprentices every year, on average 3 to 5 a year. Totally successful, up until, funny enough, to 7 years ago that you talk about. And then it all started to go wrong. The apprentices wasn't achieving. They were leaving school without the correct qualifications, and the qualification you need is to be able to literacy and numeracy. And that is a real effect on business, because the government then put a need onto companies to teach their kids maths and English. Now, I pay tax, incredible tax for me, and I pay for education, and I can't see how children can go to school and after 8, 9 years come out and they can barely read and write. And that has an effect on business. And I think you're seeing the results now of everything that goes on. Now, we as a business, we need people. We only make money for people. Every penny that this business earns is at the end of the paintbrush. And that paintbrush is being held by a person. So it's imperative to have people. So apprenticeship is the only route. It's the only route for us to train people. We train them to the systems of our business, and they make us money, and they make money. I'm very proud that our very first apprentice is now a senior contracts manager in Australia. He got on in life, and a lot of our apprentices do. And an apprenticeship route, for me personally, my family, has been incredible. It's made me something that, coming from a council estate in Islington, that I thought I could never do. And that was just by giving a chance. And this country and this industry, especially at the high tier 1 level, and we work on some very big jobs and some very small jobs, they do not encourage companies to take apprentices. They talk it, they talk the talk, they do not deliver. They do not assist. So why would you employ a company that doesn't invest in their business? And that is one of the reasons why you've got such a big drop-off. And we have a 2-tier system. So have an apprentice, you have to employ them. You have to give them the holidays, sick pay, and why not? Because that's what work's about. These companies in our industry, there's too many umbrella companies, there's too many people who do not want to employ, do not want the responsibility to employ, and that must change, because that way, if you go back to when I started work, every business had apprentices, because it was natural. Everybody trained. Could you imagine a football club without apprentices? Could you imagine a hospital without apprentices? So it is imperative, and this, to me, is really good, that it gets it. And what a shortage of people creates an unbalance in wages. And once you're paying too much for something, that because there's not enough people to do it, and with a ready workforce, with so many people unemployed or sitting at home neat, that it needs to be encouraged. And what I've read here, if it works, will be phenomenal, and it will balance the field. We need an equal playing field for all businesses, not the big boys dominating, because it's mainly SMEs who deliver the training and expertise for the apprentices. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin, for that rousing call to arms. Because what Kevin represents, what McLaughlin represents, what those young apprentices that I've met this morning represent is the future of Britain, and we need to rebuild Britain. So I want to thank all of you for coming to Enfield today. And Kevin, your support for what Reform is announcing today is really meaningful, because for so long, Westminster has ignored places like this, companies like Kevin's, and apprentices like those who have worked here. People like Kevin and his business represent a different Britain, a Britain hidden from the media and the political class, a better Britain. And it's a window into a world that we can be. And it was important for me to be here today to show what Reform represents and who we as a party are for. We are for the workers. We are for those people who wake up early every morning and graft their socks off all day and get home late at night. We're for that young, hungry, ambitious person who may have got their GCSE results today and has big dreams. We're for those who want to move forward, who want to earn, who want to learn, who want to rebuild our great country. Not content to sit back and slip into dependency. We're for those who want to get out there and make a living. We're for those who want to take responsibility. They take pride in their craft and in their skill. That's who Reform is for, and that's why we are here today. Kevin, as he said, left school with no O-levels, but he did something amazing. He became an apprentice. And from that decision back then, he is now employing over 70 people, running his own successful business, which has worked on major projects, including the Olympics and other big commercial developments right across the country. His business represents more of what we need in the UK: construction workers, surveyors, painters and decorators like those we've met today, powered by the energy of young apprentices who are gaining skills, who are earning a wage, and who are setting themselves up for life in a thriving sector which presents them with huge opportunity to progress. And that is why Britain needs apprentices. Firstly, we have a needs crisis. There are over 1 million young people who are not in education, who are not in employment, and who are not in training. That's 1 million young people not earning and not learning. It's a travesty and, quite frankly, a betrayal of the next generation. Today, about a third of those young people getting their GCSE results will have failed to pass English or maths. That's about 200,000. And that data, and the data also shows that those children who fail Key Stage 2 are more likely to end up on benefits. That costs the taxpayer £8 billion a year. We can't go on like that. Secondly, we've got too many young people who are failing in our universities because they're falling for the great university scam, signing up to £50,000 worth of debt, possibly the largest financial commitment they will have ever made in their lives at 18. For what? To study pointless subjects at mediocre universities. I've lost count of the number of businesses who tell me graduates come to them and they don't even know how to turn on the photocopier or work the kettle. The Blairite obsession with sending 50% of our young people into universities has left a generation of young people trapped by debt because they were funneled through a system that prizes university over skills. And it's left our labour market depleted and reliant on cheap foreign labour. The British taxpayer has been out of pocket to the tune of hundreds of billions of pounds worth of student debt that will have to be written off. Too many of our universities have become more interested in indoctrinating DEI than actually producing graduates who are ready for the workplace. So we also have an excessive number of graduates with qualifications that don't match the skills needed for our country. That's reflected by the number 700,000. 700,000 of our graduates are unemployed today. 400,000 of them are on welfare. For many, university just isn't worth it anymore. And thirdly, we have a severe labour market shortage in our economy. Construction, manufacturing, utilities, health and social care, they all need hundreds of thousands of people. Manufacturing apprentices are down 40%. Painting and decorating are down 60%. Health and social care starts for new apprentices are down 75%. The National House Building Confederation says that construction will need 900,000 workers to build and deliver the major house building programmes that are in the pipeline. Successive governments have instead relied on cheap foreign labour to plug these gaps, contributing to our immigration crisis. Now, as you know, as Home Secretary, I tried valiantly to restrict and lower the number of work visas, but I wasn't successful in persuading my Conservative colleagues to do that when it was the right time. That's why today we are rebalancing the scales and we are firing the starting gun on unleashing a technical and vocational renaissance of homegrown skills. Reform will not do this because it fills us with some jingoistic pride, but because we will do what it takes to save Britain from the perpetual doom loop of decline, debt and despair that we are currently in. Britain used to be a nation that built things, that made things. We used to be a nation of inventors, whether it's ships, shoes, trains, textiles, cars. We have a proud technical and vocational heritage. The Industrial Revolution itself was powered by apprenticeships. Josiah Wedgwood, who led the potteries, Matthew Murray, who designed Salamanca, the first steam locomotive, George Stephenson, the father of our railways, Richard Tice, the godfather of our building renaissance, were all apprentices. Even Brunel, after he went to university, was mostly trained as an apprentice to his father. So we've got that tradition, we've got that DNA, but we haven't tapped into it. Masters and apprentices working together with young workers, learning a job and developing their skills at the same time. Ordinary people, teaching ordinary people a trade to make them spectacular, hand to hand, generation to generation, and Britain was better for it. Our apprentices helped build the modern world. They turned us from a nation of farmland into the workshop of the world. Horrifyingly, however, over successive decades and by consecutive governments, that proud heritage has been obliterated. Almost 40% of young people head to university and just 1% into technical education. So, the Britain that Reform UK wants to build, that alternative Britain, is now no more than a foggy memory, and some of us are unsure whether it really existed. Because today, the British families who made our country great are the most disadvantaged in society. White British children are now the most likely group to not even enter GCSE exams. White working class boys are the group with the worst educational outcomes. This two-tier system of unfairness running throughout our educational system is deeply unfair and a grotesque waste of human talent. So, that is why we are announcing today the Apprenticeship's Wage Credit. And this is going to build our skills revolution. We've morphed from a rich nation that made and did things into a poor nation that with faceless corporates and shiny glass offices. We need a revolution. So our Apprenticeship's Wage Credit will offer a wage credit of worth 30% to every small or medium-sized business that hires a new young apprentice. This will save the average business over £8,000 on the cost of employing a young apprentice. It is a 30% cut for businesses taking on an apprentice. It's a significant amount. It's over £4,000 a year. Why not 5? Why not 10? Why not 20? Because we realise that to completely revamp the mindset of this country into the skills revolution that we need, the government will lead from the front. That is why we will reimburse each business 30% of the wages when they take on a young apprentice. In doing so, a reform government is investing 30% into each young person's success. We're saying to young people, if you want to work in a trade or a vocation that benefits the UK economy, if you want to avoid the rip-off degrees, then we will back you. We want a stake in your future, and we support you. Because I no longer want to live in a Britain that looks down on plumbers and carpenters and painters and decorators or care workers. I want them to be celebrated like they are in other countries. To those young apprentices that I've met today with Richard, I want to applaud you and salute you. You're role models. You're earning, you're learning, you're moving forward with your lives, and you're taking responsibility. There's no limit to what you can achieve with your work ethic and energy, and you represent what the best is of this country. Get yourself a trade, earn hundreds of pounds a day for yourself, move forward, maybe start a business in the future. That's what we want to see, a high-skilled British workforce taking pride in their work, not wasting their life chasing pointless degrees and getting crippled by debt. And when you think reform might be finished and that we haven't, that we've stopped, well, we haven't, and we will go even further. Many SMEs are hesitant about taking on an apprentice because they're nervous about the risk. They're nervous that when they pay the wage and they spend the time, many of them will just leave. So not only will we invest a 30% stake in a young apprentice's wages at the beginning of their training, but we will also introduce an apprenticeship retention bonus. Alongside the cut of hiring an apprentice, cutting the cost of employing an apprentice by £8,000 will give apprentices themselves a retention bonus. £2,000 to apprentices who show loyalty and stay with the business that trained them for at least 2 years after they complete their apprenticeship. Young people starting their careers will be incentivised to stay with a direct cash bonus, tax-free, paid straight into their bank account. The bonus demonstrates that we are serious about backing good, responsible SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprises, employers who want to invest in young British talent. It shows that if we are employers who want to invest in young British talent, it shows that if we are to generate the skills revolution that we need, Reform UK will back young people right at the start of their careers. Combined, this is over £10,000 that a Reform UK government is willing to put into each apprentice at the start of their working lives. So my advice to those young people today getting their results, my advice to those grandparents and those parents looking at the young people in their families who may be getting their results today, be careful. Don't get ripped off by the great university scam. Don't waste your time studying for a pointless degree at a mediocre university. If you want to work hard, if you want to move forward, earn a wage and have opportunities in your life, take up and look for apprentices. And a Reform UK government will ensure that those opportunities exist. Your success is our country's success. We're on your side. And when I said I wanted a skills revolution, I meant it. Thank you. Right. So, thank you very much. Richard and I will take questions from the media. So, we've got Olivia from GB News.
Good morning. According to your figures, this is going to cost about between 1.5 billion and 2 billion over a parliament. Obviously, that's very expensive. How is it going to be paid for? You mentioned scrapping Mickey Mouse degrees. What counts as a Mickey Mouse degree? Can you explain in a bit more detail?
Yeah, we've got we've costed it out in the paper before you, but generally speaking, there are big savings to be made from the huge wastage in the education budget right now. We estimate that we can save about £2 billion from stopping foreign students from accessing student loans, which are taxpayer funded. We can save, again, between £2 to £5 billion from stopping government funding for Mickey Mouse degrees. Just think of this, the government lays out £21 to £22 billion a year in student loans. I'm afraid a lot of that will never be paid back because of graduate unemployment, and a lot of it is written off. And that is a betrayal of the British taxpayer. We need to be much more rigorous with how we're spending that money initially to fund higher education. And so there are those two sources of funding. There's also a huge amount of unspent levy funding. The apprenticeship levy at the moment is not working, if I'm honest. Companies pay into the government apprenticeship pot, but because of the bureaucracy and the hurdles involved in reclaiming that money, a lot of it remains unspent, estimated about £3 billion between, for about 5 years. I'd estimate that at £500 million a year. So that money can be diverted to actual proper funding of apprenticeships. But overall, that's how we would pay for this, this tax wage credit. You want to take the next
Brilliant. BBC, Damien Grammaticus.
Over here, sorry, at the side. Yeah, one question on the apprenticeships. I mean, part of the way you said you wanted to fund it when you were speaking there, and just now, was through student loans. Student loans are accounted for as borrowing. They don't come out of day-to-day spending. So can you just confirm then, you're going to, part of this is going to be funded by borrowing? And can I ask you, Mr. Tice, a couple of questions? Tim Montgomery's suspension, were you involved in that, and do you support that? And also, there's a Reform UK candidate, Julian Malin's KC, who is a candidate for PCC in Wiltshire and in Salisbury at the general election. He's been saying that Russia is supplying drones to Ukraine, is making Russia feel threatened, that we shouldn't be doing that. We should be recognising and having diplomatic relations with Russia. and he criticised the leadership. He said in the Commons there's no voices speaking against this. So that sounds like a direct criticism of the party. Should he be suspended?
Thank you, Damien. So I think on the the first point that you raised was with regard to the funding of this, cash is cash. Whether you think that it's cash as a positive in a balance sheet or a bank account, or whether you're borrowing it, it's money, it's cash. And as Suella quite rightly said, the amount of money going into student loans, it's all government money, okay? And this government is borrowing vast sums, and the point made was that the value being extracted or being generated by so many student loans is not what it should be. And there is an additional saving, which is that those who go to do apprenticeships at 16 to 18, of course, working in businesses, small businesses like Kevin's, are, of course, those youngsters. Therefore, there is a saving in terms of the money that they're not taking from sixth form colleges, for example. So there is an additional saving there, and in a sense, we hope that this becomes ever more successful. We hope that our numbers, our growth numbers in here, turn out to be an underestimate. And if so, as Suella said, you're talking about a skills revolution from the age of 16. And just talking earlier, in Germany, for example, this has been a bedrock of small family businesses, the manufacturing sector, and that's why they've been so successful. Look, with regard to other matters, Tim and the things, we're a fast-growing political party. There'll be a range of views, and sometimes we'll agree, and sometimes we'll have a debate and discussion. That's what you do in business, that's what you do in a boardroom, that's what you do when you're brainstorming. But what we've always said is that actually, when you're having your discussions about those things, in the nicest possible way, as you would in a boardroom or in a brainstorming session in a company, you keep it behind closed doors. And then you go out and sell a great message. That's what we're doing. With regard to the other matters, frankly, it's much more important to talk about young people, apprenticeships, the future of this great nation, than anybody else.
So you're not saying that Julian Mayland...
I'm in the nicest possible way. I'm focusing on youngsters, I'm focusing on apprenticeships. That's the critical thing for what we're here today. And also, small, growing businesses. That's what we should be focusing on, Damien.
But you're not going to criticise him for saying...
Damien, in the nicest possible way, we're focusing on apprenticeships, we're focusing on small businesses, we're focusing on young people. That's the important thing. Everything else is for a different moment.
And sorry, on the
Okay.
one, it sounds like you are saying it would be borrowing.
Look, Damien, the government's borrowing £3 trillion.
Got to get it down.
It's all debt, but it's all money, right? And we're borrowing it from bond investors who are pretty grumpy at the moment, who are applying a moron premium to UK government debt, right? The 30-year cost of government borrowing is just about to hit 6%. Right? We're the worst in the developed world. And what's interesting is that you folk in the media who talked about Liz Truss trashing the economy, you haven't talked about Keir Starmer and Andy Burnham losing the confidence of the markets and crashing the economy because the 30-year government debt yield is way higher than it was back then. All right? If you want another economics lesson, I'll talk to you later.
Thank you. Bethany Dawson.
Hello. As per your plans, you will scrap loans for foreign students. Does that include EU students? And are you willing to go into a very expensive fight with the EU over this? If so, as well as your plans to change the benefit system? Yesterday, Work and Pension Secretary Pat McFadden told me that your battle with the EU isn't thought through. Do you know how much this fight would cost?
So the simple answer is yes. British students need to be put first. And so we'll be again announcing further policies soon about student financing. But we need to fix the system at the moment. As I said, where the British taxpayer, it's not the government, the British taxpayer is laying out £22 billion in student loans, whether it's borrowed or otherwise, it's cash, and it's money which is not being well spent. And so we need to ensure that the best students go to the right universities and do valuable courses. And if they are, then the government backs them. But there's many students who are not, frankly, doing that. And whether it's non-British students or whether it's students going on Mickey Mouse courses, that comes to an end under a Reform government.
There is actually a real opportunity as we move forward with apprenticeships, with trades for universities to get stuck in to help here. Because as the world of learning and with AI and everything's changing, then universities need to adapt and change and adjust with it. And it's all up for grabs. And look, we're in a low-growth, no-growth economy. Most of the major EU countries are in a low-growth, no-growth, recessionary-style environment. We've all got challenges. Keep talking. But, you know, there's no such thing as a sort of static trade deal. And we've got to have the courage to recognise that and work out what's best for the UK.
Changing the conditions of the Brexit agreement, though, in terms of benefits and student loans, would likely be a costly argument with the EU. Do you know how much it would cost?
Let's talk about it as a broad, overarching debate. You know, you're talking about... The thing is, when you strike an agreement, it's not like forever. The world's changing. You know, when we struck that agreement, AI didn't exist, right? Here we are, 7 years later, and the world's changing fast. And whether it's on fishing deals, whether it's on student deals, or all sorts of other things, of course, we'll talk to our friends in the EU and say, where are we today? Where do we need to go? How are we going to stop the boats? And find some solutions. We'll agree on lots, and we may not agree on others.
You haven't calculated how much this...
Well, what I would say is that
I'm an optimist, and I'm working on the basis that you talk about a cost, I talk about an opportunity.
And ultimately, the agreement with the EU is not the best one that we could get. If you look at Northern Ireland, it's not working. And so there does need to be a review of our situation, our arrangement with the EU. And
they've got massive problems as well. It's not working for them.
Tom, at the Sun.
Thank you very much. Should businesses which replace entry-level workers with AI also have to pay towards retraining young people for apprenticeships? And the second question, if I may, if you had a 16-year-old getting their GCSE results and looking forward to university in 2 years' time, can you name one very specific Mickey Mouse degree that you would say not to study?
Okay, well, listen, so AI, I think, AI is coming, as Richard said, and we need to be very cognizant of how that's going to change the labour market, how we even educate and prepare our young people for the workforce of the future. And anyone who thinks it's not going to be a factor has their head buried in the sand. This is why I believe so passionately in a skills revolution. We need young people who are going to be builders, scaffolders, painters and decorators, quantity surveyors, people whose jobs will not be hit by AI. And frankly, Kevin and the young people you've met here, you are AI proof, because AI is not going to be able to paint a room. And so I think that employers are feeling the impact of AI. There are jobs which are being replaced by AI. And so we're all feeling it, and it's coming faster and faster. And that's why my advice to young people is be very aware of the changing labour market and prepare yourself accordingly. In terms of Mickey Mouse courses, listen, this has been well chronicled for many years, whether it's gender studies, whether it's golf course studies, I think I've seen. There's not a necessity, there's not a value in many of these degrees. Now, I know that might be uncomfortable for those people who have those qualifications, but the reality is you've got to ask yourself, what are your graduate outcomes looking like? Have you really spent 3 years of your life in the best possible way, and was it worth £50,000 worth of debt? Young people are coming out of university unable to get onto the housing ladder, unable and unwilling to get married, unable to start a family. Why? Because they're starting off with their hands tied behind their backs, because they've been sold a lie that university was the pathway to success. For hundreds of thousands of young people, it is not. far better to those young people getting their results today at 16. Think about how you can avoid that trap. Start earning, start learning in a sector where you've got opportunities to progress, maybe start out on your own. There is huge potential for you. You've got to be smart about your choices. Christian at the Daily Mail.
Hiya. Constant infighting, bickering, briefings against each other, an intensely unpopular individual dominating headlines, an institution at war with itself. What do you make of Harry and Meghan returning to Britain?
I thought you were talking about the Conservative Party then.
I thought you were talking about the Labour Party.
Harry and Meghan, listen, I think they're no longer working members of the royal family. What they do is their business.
Yeah, we're focusing on young people and apprenticeships in the nicest possible way. But thank you, Christian. Do you have a question about the specifics? I mean, although of course their own children, as they go through school, when they do their GCSEs, they can benefit from if they actually decide that university's not for them. And the world of Hollywood and media, for example, they might decide that their best opportunities is through an apprenticeship through this brilliant scheme.
Would you encourage young Robs to take up apprenticeship opportunities?
I think absolutely, because as we've talked about, and as you see, the skills that you learn can then, as you grow, you succeed, you become an entrepreneur, a risk taker. You never forget what you learnt in those first couple of years. Here we are. Whatever it is, 43 years later, I never forget digging that first trench with a guy, working the JCB digger, and it's absolutely etched in my heart. So those are the great skills that we learn.
Harry, the Press Association, great.
Good morning, Harry Taylor from the Press Association. Two questions. First of all, Mrs Braverman, you talked about the university scam, mediocre institutions, Mickey Mouse courses. If you clamp down on these, universities will close and jobs will go. I think you talked about the reality earlier. I think that's probably the reality of it. How many under a reform government would you be willing to see go?
So I don't think it necessarily needs to mean closures. I think it means reorienting. And I think we're coming to the end of the era of the kind of cash cow of higher education. Universities have grown fat on foreign students. The floodgates were opened by the last Conservative government, something when I went into the Home Office I was determined to reverse. We all know how that ended. I was blocked by Rishi Sunak and the last Conservative government, although I did manage to eke out the first set of changes to foreign students in May 2023. Those were the first ever changes, and from then you can see a decline. But ultimately, foreign students have been a cash cow for a lot of universities. And it's been universities have been selling immigration, not education, for many, many years. That needs to come to an end. What I would say to universities is you need to reorient yourselves, repurpose yourselves into construction colleges, into manufacturing colleges. I want elite institutions which raise the esteem of the trades. So there's no need to close. There is a need, however, to meet the needs of our labour market and the skills revolution. So get with our agenda, come and work with us, and you can be part of this revolution, not a casualty of it.
And actually, it is so important that they readjust, that they adapt to the changing world. When I was with a group of AI entrepreneurs just recently, one of them said that his son was just leaving a very well-known university, trained as a lawyer. He had 7 other friends also just graduating as lawyers. Not a single one of the 7 had an internship or a job offer from any legal firm. Not a single one. So universities will have no choice but to adjust and adapt and work it out. And in the nicest possible way, we're also negotiating on behalf of the taxpayer. And we've got to make sure that we get value for money. For every pound, whether you think it's cash or whether you think it's debt. And that's our job and that's the balance. And I think because AI has come so quickly that, it's a challenge for everybody. It's a challenge for businesses, it's a challenge for universities, it's a challenge for government, but it's also, of course, a great opportunity. Get it right.
And just Secondly, in the last few weeks, your Home Affairs spokesperson has called people who disagree with him traitors. Reform has suspended Tim Montgomery, as has been mentioned, and Nigel Farage didn't turn up to the count in Clacton, partially, we suspect, because he didn't want to be photographed alongside Count Binface and 35 other candidates of spurious sort of background. But is there a chance now that Reform is coming across as rather thin-skinned with all of this in the last few weeks?
Oh, far from it. I think, we get more scrutiny than everybody else, but isn't it interesting? Nigel's success in Clacton, getting 1,000 more votes than he secured despite a much, much lower turnout. That was an incredible result through hard work, through a brilliant campaign. And what I haven't spotted you report is that we're going back up in the polls. And we're back ahead of Labour. We're not afraid of competition. In a sense, democracy demands competition. And voters have got more choice. That's a good thing. None of us have ever claimed we're perfect. In all life, even in the media. Do you know what? We do lots of things well in businesses. We get lots right, we make mistakes. That's the nature of life. But we push on, we're being successful, and we're getting a fantastic response. And what I'm so excited about is it's in the SME sector. Whether it's the one or two man band or woman band or a growing business, that's the bedrock of getting us back to the sort of growth that we used to enjoy in the 80s and 90s, 3% year in, year out. And we've got a major crisis at the moment. We've got no growth and we've got a debt crisis.
Rowena, Guardian. No. And Alexander, The Mirror.
Hi, Suella, as Home Secretary, you proposed new laws to restrict the use of tents by homeless people, called it a lifestyle choice, and you would have dished out penalties for those authorities believed had rejected offers of help. Do you stand by that, and do you support the PM's pledge to end rough sleeping?
Well, I didn't say that homelessness was a lifestyle choice. I said that we are a compassionate nation and we want to support people who are vulnerable. And homelessness is a really complex issue. People often have mental health problems, addiction problems, family breakdown issues, worklessness issues. And so there's a holistic approach that needs to be taken to combating homelessness. And there is a subset of people who are on our streets who are choosing to be there. And we've just seen a report yesterday that there's a very high number of, I think, record number of foreign nationals who are living as homeless, are homeless on our streets. They're coming here, some of them illegally, who don't have the right to be here, and they are choosing to live on the streets, and that often is linked to criminality. And so I think we need to be honest about the nature and the scale of the problem. It is nuanced. There are genuinely homeless people who are there through no fault of their own, and they need compassion and support. We need more house building. We need more affordable housing for them. And there are people who are frankly breaking the law and causing a blight on our communities, involving, criminal activity, aggressive begging, harassment on the streets, ruining parts of our community. And there needs to be a tough approach taken towards those.
And with regard to the Prime Minister, look, we'd all like to end homelessness, of course. So the Prime Minister's ambition is a good one. And I hope that he learns the lessons of his failures over the last 4 years in Manchester, where homelessness numbers have actually risen, not reduced. But that's fine. He can learn from those and do better, Prime Minister.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.